Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. He slid in behind me at the kitchen counter, his chest warm against my back, his hands resting on my hips like they belonged there and nowhere else. Still nervous, he murmured against my ear, his breath making me shiver more than I wanted to admit. I smirked, eyes fixed on the 2 wine glasses I was polishing. About what? Watching another woman stare at you the way I do. His quiet laugh vibrated through me. No one looks at me the way you do. I turned in his arms, letting my hands travel up his shirt, feeling the shape of him through the fabric. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then lifted slowly, heavy with that familiar heat. It wasn't just desire, there was trust there, something dangerous and comforting all at once. "They'll be here soon," I said softly. "Once we cross this line, we can't pretend it was just a joke anymore. Do you want to stop?" He asked, but his thumb was already tracing circles at my waist, pulling me closer instead of letting go. I studied his face, the tiny crease between his brows he only got when something really mattered. "No," I said finally. "I want to see you. I want to see him. I want to see her." His jaw tightened for a second, then he smiled, slow and wicked. "You really think she's going to fall apart for you that easily?" I leaned in until our noses almost touched. "I know she will." The doorbell cut through the moment, sharp and electric. We both froze. His hands stayed on my waist, my fingers curled into his shirt. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with us. "That's them," he whispered. "I know." My voice came out softer than I intended. My pulse was racing, half anticipation, half something I didn't want to name. "Last chance," he said, eyes locked on mine. "We open that door, everything changes." I swallowed, forcing a small, crooked smile as my heart pounded in my throat. I slipped out of his arms and started toward the hallway, feeling his gaze on my back like a touch. Just before I reached the door, I saw their shadows shift against the frosted glass, 2 silhouettes standing too close, her hand brushing his arm. I closed my fingers around the handle, and hesitated. I drew in a breath and turned the handle. The door opened on their smiles. She was the first one I saw, dark hair pulled into a loose knot, lips painted a shade too bold for someone who claimed to be a little shy. Her eyes flicked from my face to the way my husband hovered just behind me, his hand casually resting at the small of my back like a promise. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than the grin I forced. "Come in." They stepped inside, bringing in a rush of cool night air and something else, nervous excitement, curiosity, that buzz you feel right before you cross a line you can't uncross. Her husband shook my hand, his fingers lingering half a second longer than necessary. He had that easy charm, the kind that could make anyone feel like the center of the room. "Nice place," he said, glancing around, but his gaze slid back to me, as if he wanted to see how I reacted to his approval. "Thanks," I replied, tilting my head. "We cleaned up, just for you." Behind me, I felt my husband's thumb trace a slow, suggestive line against my spine. It was a small touch, but I knew she noticed. Her eyes dipped, then returned to my face with a tiny, knowing smile. We moved toward the living room. The lights were low, the city glow filtering through the curtains like a faint halo. 2 wine bottles sat waiting on the table, glasses neatly arranged in a way that looked casual but wasn't. My husband brushed past me to grab the corkscrew, his arm brushing my waist, his lips ghosting near my temple as he passed. "Red or white?" he asked them, but his eyes stayed on me. "Red," she answered, then slowly crossed her legs as she sat, the fabric of her dress whispering over her skin. "I like rich things." Her husband laughed softly. "She means wine," he said, but the way he looked at me added another layer entirely. I sank down beside my husband, our thighs pressed together on purpose. His hand rested on my knee, thumb drawing idle patterns, each stroke a reminder, we were in this together. But beneath that warmth, there was the secret he and I weren't saying out loud, the thing we had already agreed, the silent roles each of us would play tonight. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, studying us. So, she said, smiling slowly, are you two always this close? I met her gaze and let my lips curve in a bold, deliberate way. Only when someone's watching, I said. The room went quiet for a heartbeat. For people, for different breaths, all caught in the same invisible net. No one backed away. No one changed the subject. Her eyes darkened just enough to tell me I'd hit exactly where I wanted. And then her husband shifted on the couch, leaned back, and looked at me like he'd just realized the rules of the game were different than he'd imagined, like maybe he wasn't the only one who knew how to make someone come undone. I took a slow sip of wine, feeling all three of them watching me, waiting to see what I'd do next. I smiled over the rim of my glass and said nothing. Her eyes stayed on me, like she was trying to read the answer between my lashes. My husband's fingers tightened on my knee for just a second, almost possessive, almost a warning, before he relaxed again, thumb resuming its lazy circles. So, her husband said, breaking the silence with a crooked grin, how long have you two been like this? Like what? I asked, leaning back, letting my shoulder press fully into my husband's chest. I felt his breath near my ear, the way his body curved around mine like he was built to fit there. Comfortable, he said, eyes dipping to where my husband's hand rested high on my thigh now, just beneath the hem of my dress. Fearless. For years, my husband replied quietly, his lips brushing my hair as he spoke. We made a promise early on, no lies. About anything we want. The air around the coffee table seemed to thicken. Her gaze flicked between us, then dropped to my legs. She shifted closer on the couch until our knees almost touched. That sounds dangerous, she murmured. No lies. It's more dangerous pretending, I said. My bare knee grazed hers, just lightly, and neither of us moved away. Things leak out eventually. Her husband chuckled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Is that what tonight is? He asked. Things leaking out. My husband's fingers slid a fraction higher, his touch slow, careful, like he knew exactly how close to the edge we were playing. I fought the urge to close my eyes. Instead, I looked at her. She held my stare a beat too long enough to remind me of the bathroom at that bar, weeks ago, when our hands had accidentally touched at the sink and neither of us pulled away. Long enough to bring back the fast, breathless moment in the mirror when our faces had been inches apart and I'd seen it. The same hunger, the same question. Now, that same question sat between us on my couch. Maybe tonight is about honesty, she said softly. Nothing wrong with being curious. Her husband shifted. Curious about what exactly? She didn't answer him. She watched me instead, and without thinking, I let my hand rest on the cushion between us, close enough that our fingers could accidentally brush. When they did, a current jolted up my arm. My husband noticed. I felt him go a little still behind me, his hand pausing on my thigh. The room narrowed to 4 people, 4 glasses, 1 invisible line. Then a phone buzzed sharply on the table. Her husband glanced down. The screen lit up with a preview of a message, my name at the top, words he was never meant to see glowing clearly in the quiet room. His eyes froze on it. His jaw hardened. Slowly, very slowly, he lifted his gaze to me. When, he asked, voice low and dangerous, were you going to tell me about this? His voice cut through the room like a knife. When were you going to tell me about this? All 3 of us followed his gaze to the phone on the table. My name glowed on the screen, above a preview of a message I knew far too well. I still feel your hand on my skin. We both know we didn't stop because we wanted to. My stomach dropped. She moved first. Give me that, she snapped, reaching for the phone, but he was faster. He snatched it up and leaned back, thumb unlocking the screen with a practiced swipe. Don't, she whispered, color draining from her face. My husband's hand slid from my thigh to my fingers, threading them together like he was anchoring me in place. I could feel his pulse in his grip. Or maybe it was mine. Her husband scanned the screen, jaw tightening. The bar, he said slowly. The bathroom. You told me it was nothing. It was almost nothing, she shot back, eyes flashing toward me. We didn't even, doesn't look like nothing, he cut in, holding the phone up. She says she still feels your hand on her skin. The words hung in the air, too loud even in a whisper. My husband shifted behind me. I already knew, he said quietly. All three of us turned to him. He didn't look guilty. He looked tired and strangely calm. She told me, he added, giving my hand a squeeze. Weeks ago. Her husband's eyes narrowed. And you what? Decided to host a little double date too. What? Watch it in HD this time. My husband's stare hardened. I decided, he said, voice low, that hiding it would be worse than facing it. He glanced ahead at me. For us. Heat rushed to my face. I told him, I said, forcing my voice steady, because I didn't want it to become some ugly secret. I thought tonight would make it clearer. For everyone. For everyone, her husband repeated, laughing once, humorless. So the three of you have some grand plan, and I'm the last to know. Her hand landed on my knee, fingers curling, a silent apology or a plea, I couldn't tell. The contact sent a ripple up my body. My husband felt it. I sensed his jaw clench near my cheek. That's not what this is, she said, leaning forward, eyes shiny now. I was scared to tell you. You get jealous over strangers at a bar. How was I supposed to tell you? She cut herself off, biting her lip. Almost what? He demanded. Almost cheated. Almost lied. Almost kissed her, my husband said evenly. The room went still. Her husband stared at me now, like he was seeing me for the first time. Did you want to? He asked. I swallowed. Yes. The word came out quiet, but it was the only one that didn't taste like a lie. Her fingers tightened on my knee. My husband's hand rose to my shoulder, thumb brushing the side of my neck in a slow, soothing stroke that made my breath hitch. I didn't do anything behind his back, I said, looking straight at her husband. I told him. We talked. We argued. I glanced back at my husband. We almost broke that night. He leaned in, lips close to my ear, his breath warm. We didn't break, he murmured. We bent. A shiver ran through me. He knew exactly what he was doing to me, to the room. Her husband let out a sharp breath. So why am I only hearing about this now? Because I'm a coward, she burst out, voice cracking. Because I wanted you to see what you're always accusing me of, and realize it's not that simple. Because I needed to know if you'd fight for me or just get angry and walk away. Silence. My husband shifted, sliding his arm around my waist, pulling me back into him like he was claiming his place. My body molded against his automatically, my free hand resting over his forearm. His lips brushed the top of my shoulder through the fabric, a soft, lingering touch that made my skin buzz. Her eyes tracked that movement, heat and hurt warring in them. The tension snapped tighter when her husband suddenly stood. Fine, he said, tossing his phone back onto the table. You all want honesty. Let's stop pretending this is about wine and board games. He stepped closer to me, invading my space just enough to make my pulse jump, just enough that I felt my husband stiffen behind me. Right now, he said quietly, eyes locked on mine, no filters, no polite lies. Who do you actually want to be sitting closer to? The air thinned. Her hand was still on my knee. My husband's arm was still locked around my waist. Her husband was inches from my face, daring me to answer. 3 different touches, 3 different futures pressing in on me at once. I drew in a shaky breath, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own voice as I parted my lips to choose, and from the hallway, the sound of a key turning in the front door echoed through the apartment. Someone else was about to walk in. The key turned, the latch clicked, and the door swung inward. All 4 of us jerked toward the hallway like guilty teenagers. Hello, a voice called. My husband shot to his feet, arm dragging me up with him. Food, he blurted, almost laughing. I forgot I ordered. The delivery guy appeared in the doorway, holding 2 paper bags. He took one look at the 4 of us frozen in the half-dark, the untouched board game on the shelf, the open wine, and gave a small, polite, deeply confused smile. Big night, he asked. No, the 3 of us said at once. Yes, my husband added a beat later, taking the bags. Just friends. The word hung there a second too long. Enjoy, the guy muttered, backing out. The door closed with a soft thud that sounded much louder than it should have. Silence rushed back in. Her husband turned to me again. The question still stands, he said, voice low. Who do you actually want to be closer to? I felt my pulse pounding in my throat. Her hand was still warm against my knee. My husband's fingers hovered at my waist. I could feel both of them like magnets pulling in opposite directions. I can't answer that like it's a game, I said quietly. Because whatever I say, breaks something. Something's already broken, he shot back. My husband exhaled. He's right, he said. But there's one more thing you should know before she answers. I turned to him, dread curling in my stomach. What did you do? He didn't look away. I sent that message to his phone, he said. Tonight. Her husband froze. You what? That text, my husband went on, nodding toward the phone. It's real. She did send it. Weeks ago. To her. He glanced at the woman beside me. But the forward to your phone. That was me. I found the old thread. I forced it to surface. Heat flared in my chest. You went through my phone. I went through both your phones, he said. His voice was breaking a little now. Because I was losing my mind watching you circle each other and lying by omission while pretending we were all fine. Her husband let out a bitter laugh. So you staged this little ambush. I staged the truth, my husband snapped. Then softer to me, I needed to see what you'd do when the secret finally had teeth. Tears stung my eyes, but underneath the anger was something else, relief. Everything we'd been dancing around was finally in the open, ugly and bright. Her hand slid higher, from my knee to my wrist, fingers curling around it, steadying me. I looked at her. Her eyes were shining raw. Did you want to kiss me? She asked, barely above a whisper. Yes, I breathed. Do you still? My husband's hand tightened at my waist. Her husband's jaw clenched. Every part of my body felt suspended between them. Slowly I turned, stepping out of the triangle and facing my husband fully. His eyes were wet, his jaw hard. I grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him closer. If I'm choosing who I sit closer to, I said, voice shaking, it's you. His forehead dropped to mine with a shuddered exhale. His hands cradled my face, thumbs catching the stray tears. When he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate, angry, terrified, the kind of kiss that says, don't you dare walk away from me. The room faded. I clutched him back, fingers digging into his shoulders, breathing him in like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. Behind us, I heard a sharp inhale. When we finally pulled apart, I didn't let go of him, but I turned, still holding his hand, and reached my free hand toward her. She stared at it, stunned. Her husband did too. I wanted you, I said to her honestly. But I don't want to destroy myself to have you. Or him. Or this. I squeezed my husband's fingers. So if we stay in each other's lives, it's like this, no lies, no pretending we're one step away from something else. Or we don't stay at all. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, she put her hand in mine. Her grip trembled. Her husband's eyes narrowed, but there was something else there now, fear, not just rage. You don't get to keep both of us and call it noble, he said roughly. She isn't, my husband answered before I could. She's choosing. She's just refusing to erase what she feels to make it easier on you. And you, her husband demanded. What are you choosing? My husband glanced at the two of us, my hand in his, my other hand in hers, and gave a tired, crooked half-smile. I'm choosing to live with the fact that my wife's first impulse wasn't to run, he said. And that scares me more than anything. The last twist landed in the way he looked at her then, not with suspicion, but with a quiet, reluctant understanding of someone who realized he'd been pushing her away for longer than tonight. For the first time, he didn't look at me when he spoke. He looked at her. If anyone's breaking us, he said hoarsely, it might not be her. It might be me. And, for a second, it wasn't my decision hanging in the air, it was hers. She looked at him, then at me, then at the man whose shirt I was still clutching like an anchor, and finally, she let go of my hand first. But her fingers dragged against my palm as they slipped away, leaving a slow-burning promise that the story between all four of us wasn't nearly as finished as we pretended. She let go of my hand first, and the room seemed to exhale with her. No one said goodbye the way people usually do. There were no hugs at the door, no promises of "we'll do this again." Just shoes slipping on in silence, the soft rustle of her coat, the faint clink of his keys. At the doorway, she looked back once. Our eyes met across the dim hallway. There was apology there, and something else, something that wasn't quite regret. Then the door closed behind them, and it was just us. The apartment felt bigger and smaller at the same time. I stood there, fingers still curled like I could feel her hand in mine. My husband slid his arms around me from behind, pulling me gently back against his chest. I let myself lean into him without thinking, my body remembering how to fit into his like it had 1,000 times before tonight tried to rewrite us. "You're quiet," he murmured against my hair. "I'm trying not to replay every second," I said. "It's not working." He huffed a soft breath that might have been a laugh. "Same." We drifted back into the living room together, still holding on to each other. The wine glasses were half full, the food untouched. It looked like a party that had never really started. He sat, tugging me down onto the couch with him, so I ended up half across his lap. His hand settled on my hip, firm and steady, like he was reminding both of us I was still his to hold. "Are you angry I told the truth?" I asked quietly. He tilted my chin, so I had to look at him. His eyes were tired, rimmed with red, but clear. "I'm angry it took us getting here for you to say it out loud," he admitted. "But I'm more scared of the version of us where you never did." My throat tightened. "You went through my phone." "I did." He didn't flinch. "And I'm not proud of it." I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't enough. Afraid if I asked, you'd say exactly what you said tonight. That I wanted her. That you wanted more, he said softly. More feeling. More danger. More, you. Something in my chest cracked open at that. I cupped his face in both hands, stroking my thumbs along the rough line of his jaw. "I wanted to know if I could want something else and still choose you," I whispered. Tonight scared me. But not because of them. Because of how much I realized I don't want to lose this. His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding that breath for weeks. "Then don't," he said. "Don't lose it. Don't run from it. And if you ever feel pulled like that again, don't let it live in your head alone. Bring it here. To me. Even if it hurts." I leaned in until our noses brushed. Even if it hurts. Especially then. Our kiss this time wasn't frantic or desperate. It was slow, deliberate, a promise we were both signing with our mouths. His fingers tightened at my waist. My hand slid into his hair, holding him close, not because I was afraid he'd leave, but because I finally understood I didn't want to. When we broke apart, our foreheads touched, breaths mingling. "So what are we now?" I asked, voice barely there. He smiled, that small, crooked smile that was only ever for me. "Messy," he said. "Honest. Still stupidly in love." I laughed, the sound shaky and bright as it slipped out of me. I tucked myself closer into him, my leg draped over his hand resting warm and solid on my back. Outside, the city lights blinked like distant stars. Inside, our living room was a quiet island of tangled limbs and shared breath. We didn't solve everything that night. We didn't have to. We just lay there, pressed together on our worn couch, hearts thudding in the same restless rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering what it would feel like to be anywhere else. I knew exactly where I wanted to be. Right there, with him, in that imperfect little moment that somehow felt like the start of something truer than anything we'd tried to pretend before.